Hi there, it's been an update to the Operation Puerto case, and lots of you, I'm pretty sure the vast majority of you that have started cycling or doing triathlon fairly recently will have no idea whatsoever this big hoo-ha is about Operation Puerto. Operation Puerto dates back to 2006, 10 years ago, when police raids uncovered 200 bags of blood in a clinic run by Dr. Eufemiano Fuentes. Let's just call him Dr. Fuentes. A clinic run by Dr. Fuentes in Madrid. Police seized over 200 bags of blood, and that case has now come to conclusion, and there's been a new twist that's come out of the whole process. At the end of the original case, the Judge Julia Patricia Santamaria gave Fuentes a suspended sentence and for endangering the public health, and handed the Jose Ignacio Labarta, an official from the Kelm cycling team, a 4-month suspended sentence. However, both of those sentences were subsequently overturned on appeal, simply because the law that the judge was prosecuting them under didn't exist in 2006 when the police raids took place. Yes, the law existed by the time the case came to trial, but at the time that the bags were seized, the blood bags were seized, there was no law on the Spanish statutes that under which she was trying to prosecute the case. So she was prosecuting a case on a law that hadn't existed at the time. So therefore, Fuentes couldn't have been ruled to have been breaking the law if that law didn't exist. In a sort of walk roundabout way, it sort of makes sense. But the big issue here is that at the time that the court case originally concluded, the Judge Santamaria gave the order that the blood bags, which was sitting frozen in the Barcelona anti-drugs laboratory, be destroyed, because the DNA samples that are within those blood bags would be testing those would be an infringement on the athlete's right to privacy. Bearing in mind, we're talking about a sports clinic in Madrid that was involved with blood transfusions, blood doping, and the judge orders that all of that evidence be destroyed because it is a infringement on the athlete's right to privacy. Go figure. But anyway, that decision was appealed by the UCI, the International Cycling Federation, the Italian Olympic Committee, the Spanish Cycling Federation, as well as WADA, the World Anti-Doping Association, collaborated and filed an appeal, and that appeal has been upheld. So, which means that the those bags of blood in the freezer in the Barcelona anti-doping lab will be able to be effectively turned over to WADA, turned over to different sporting codes and governing bodies for further investigation. And one of the things that came out of the Operation Puerto hearings way back was that there were more than 50 cyclists originally linked to the case. Bear in mind, you're talking about 200 blood bags and 50 cyclists originally linked to the case. They included Alberto Contador, Joseba Bellocchi, Oscar Sevilla, Marco Pantani, Mario Cipollini, and Roberto Heras. Among those that were eventually suspended as a result of the Operation Puerto investigation included Jan Ulrich, Alejandro Valverde, and Ivan Basso. And Ivan Basso, later, just before retiring, confirmed that his blood was amongst the frozen samples found. But as I mentioned, it wasn't only cyclists that were involved, and this was something that Fuentes was incredibly indignant about, that Only cyclists were named in the various reports. However, cyclists formed actually a relatively small portion of his client base. At one stage, there was the relating to lists of Fuentes' clients that was reported by a newspaper in France that eventually had a defamation lawsuit filed against that newspaper by none other than Rafael Nadal, who then asked the International Tennis Federation to make all his anti-doping drug tests publicly available. So, has Nadal been on the juice? You make the decision there. My personal feeling is any sports star right up at the top elite level of whatever their chosen discipline is, I make the assumption that there's juice involved, simply because it gives them, the athlete, the edge to be able to do their job that much better. So, Fuentes' allegations that he was incensed that only the cyclists were mentioned and not any of the others. One of the cyclists involved in the case had mentioned had told newspaper reporters in France that several well-known footballers from La Liga were in the offices of Dr. Fuentes at the same time as what he was sitting in the waiting room. And Fuentes himself said that he worked with several top tennis stars and he worked with several top football stars. And in the French newspaper Le Monde, which covered a list of the Spanish doctor's clients, included medical records of most of the Real Madrid football team as well as other top Spanish clubs. And the interesting thing to note there is one of the doctors that worked with Fuentes during that time was a Dr. Luis Garcia Mondial, who was one of the doctors working with the Barcelona football team, just happened to be also one of the doctors working with Armstrong and the US Postal Service's cycling team. Is there any correlation there? You make the call. I won't make the call there, but follow the money. So that brings me to the end of this exciting update on the Operation Puerto. So it looks like there might still be a number of tales still to be told as far as the whole Operation Puerto thing is concerned. What the sporting authorities will be able to do 10 years after the bloodbaths were seized remains an open book, because after all, the statute of limitations as far as prosecution is concerned expired after 8 years. That brings us to the end of this video. Remember, like, share, subscribe, and until we meet again, stay carved up for the win, and I'll see you then. Cheers.